Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to GwenGwiz ASMR. So today's video is going to be all about some of my favorite books that I've read recently. I think they're all fiction, actually. So if you're in need of some entertaining book recommendations, things to read, then you should hopefully like this video. And also, if you're a fan of tracing, and also if you're a fan of tracing, page turning, and possibly inaudible whispers, then hopefully you'll find this video nice and relaxing and tingly too. So we're gonna start in no particular order, really. Why don't we do this one first? So this one is a last addition to the book pile. I feel like I told you guys about this book already. Except I don't think that I did, so I'm not sure. My apologies if this is, if you've already heard me mention this before. This is by Jasper Ford, who is one of my favorite fiction authors. Maui says hello. If you hear paw sounds and maybe a few meows in the background, you know who to blame. He's in a weird mood for sure. Anyways, where was I? So Jasper Ford is one of my favorite authors because everything he writes is so whimsical and fun. It's such a totally new world that he takes you into. And he's English as well, which you can really tell in the way that he writes certain terminology that he uses, and anything England is just has my heart. I love England, so yeah, he's a really good author. I loved his Thursday Next series. I'd really recommend that. Literally all his books are really, really good. I love him. And this is his most recent release. It's called The Constant Rabbit. And I don't want to give anything too much away with this or any of the books, but basically there is this event that supposedly happened in the 60s where rabbits suddenly became anthropomorphized. I can't say that word right, but they essentially became a lot more similar to humans. They walked on 2 legs, they can speak English, and this kind of is about that world and what happened there, and there's some romance involved as well, and so entertaining. So I'll read you the back. England 2020. There are 1.2 million human-sized rabbits living in the UK. They can walk, talk, and drive cars. The result of an inexplicable anthropomorphizing event 55 years ago. And a family of rabbits is about to move into much hemlock, a cozy little village where life revolves around summer fets, jam making, gossipy corner stores, and the oh so important Best Kept Village Awards. No sooner have the rabbits arrived than the villagers decide they must depart. But Miss Constance Rabbit is made of sterner stuff, and her family are behind her. Unusually, so are their neighbors, long-time resident Peter Knox and his daughter Pippa, who soon find that you can be a friend to rabbits or humans, but not both. With a blossoming romance, acute cultural differences, and forced rehoming to a mega warren in Wales, and the full power of the ruling United Kingdom anti-rabbit party against them, Peter and Pippa are about to question everything they'd ever thought about their friends, their nation, and their species. It'll take a rabbit to teach a human humanity. So, you get a good idea there. It's so good. I'd really recommend it. Constant Rabbit. And now, I'll just read you one page, and we'll attempt some inaudible whispers so I don't spoil it too much for you. Page 1. Speed librarying. Somebody once said that the library is actually the dominant life form on the planet. Humans simply exist as the reproductive means to achieve more libraries. Still on the westerns, Baroness Thatcher, I asked, moving slowly down the line to volunteer. They were standing in readiness outside the library, a smallish mock Tudor building in the middle of much hemlock itself, much less in the middle of the country of Beerwood, which in turn was pretty much in the middle of the UK. Much hemlock was, and pretty much by meaning of the word middling. Westerns are the best when they're not really westerns at all, said Baroness Thatcher. Like one more akin to the Greek epics of True Grit, for example. Shane is more my kind of thing, said Stanley Baldwin, who I think fancied himself as a softly spoken man of understated power and influence. Winston Churchill opined they were both wrong, and that Oxbow incident was flawed, with its generally positive themes of extrajudicial violence. So, yeah, that's book number 1. This is going to be a long video, so I'll try to speed it up as we go. I could talk about books all day long. And the next book is absolutely my favorite of the bunch. This was so entertaining. It was so interesting. I feel like I also learned a lot because there's it's a fictional story, but it incorporates a lot of facts in it, and there's a bunch of footnotes throughout. Like, this is a long book, but a good chunk of it is actually just the bibliography. Yeah, like there's an appendix, and then almost 50 pages of sources and a little kind of non-fiction explanation as well. It's so interesting. So this is all about the environment, and it's by the author Michael Crichton, which might be familiar to you. He's the author of Jurassic Park 1 and 2, and my boyfriend's been going through a big Michael Crichton kick recently. He just read all of his, I think he has like 13 books, and they all sounded very entertaining, so they're definitely on my reading list as well. And this is called State of Fear. And as you can kind of tell from the cover with that lightning bolt, and like I said, it's all about the environment and weather and climate, and I don't want to spoil too much. Is there a summary or something? Okay, I'll tell you what my boyfriend told me because it didn't really spoil it, but there's no summary and I don't want to ruin it entirely for you. So this follows the story of a lawyer, and the main overarching story, there's a lot of little bits and pieces, but there is basically a terrorist group that causes a lot of environmental havoc. Big things that can be misconstrued as a natural disaster, but in fact, the story is totally a terrorist act. Like, they have all these different tools, like they can cause explosions in the water that can then trigger a tsunami, as an example, and they can cause floods. There's so many different little things, and it follows the lawyer as he tries to uncover the mystery of it all and also stop these terrorists from causing a lot of damage and death and destruction. And it's just so interesting. Like, I cannot explain. And this is like 700 pages long, but I think I read it in like a week, which is really fast for me because it was so entertaining. I was just flying through it. Like, I really cannot explain how fascinating it was. And Michael Crichton just is so smart, and I really loved it. I loved the little like appendix explanation at the end as well. It was just, I can't explain how much I would suggest this book, you guys. It's so good. So, oh, I lie. It actually does have a very small summary, so I'll read that. In Paris, a young physicist performs an oceanographic experiment, then dies mysteriously after a romantic tryst with a beautiful stranger. in the jungles of Malaysia. Powerful hypersonic cavitation technology capable of toppling mountains with sound is purchased by a private interest for an unspecified purpose. In Vancouver, a businessman leases a small research submarine for use in the waters off New Guinea, and in Tokyo and Los Angeles in Antarctica in the Solomon Islands. An intelligence agent races to put all the pieces together to prevent a global catastrophe. Seriously, guys, it was one of the best book I read all year, without a doubt. Like, it was so entertaining and so interesting and so full of just wisdom as well. I absolutely loved it. So, yeah. And I'll read you I'll read you the first page. After this little introduction, I'll read you after that. Paris Nord, Sunday, which I think is North Paris, Sunday, May 2nd, 2004 at 12 p.m. In the darkness, he touched her arm and said, "Stay here." She did not move. She waited. The smell of salt water was strong. She heard the faint gurgle of water. Then the lights came on, reflecting off the surface of a large open tank, perhaps 50 meters long and 20 meters wide. It might have been an indoor swimming pool, except for all the electronic equipment that surrounded it, and the very strange device at the far end of the pool. Jonathan Marshall came back to her, grinning like an idiot. "Qu'est-ce que c'est? Qu'est-ce que tu penses?" he said, though he knew his pronunciation was terrible. "What do you think?" "It is magnificent," the girl said. When she spoke English, her accent sounded exotic. In fact, everything about her was exotic, Jonathan thought. With her dark skin, high cheekbones, and black hair, she might have been a model. And she strutted like a model in her short skirt and spike heels. That first chapter really gets you hooked. I would read this basically more about the story. Alright, next up, this is another, these are all really good books, but this one was also up there when it comes to how entertaining and the thought-provoking it was. So it's by the author Glenn Beck, which I've never heard of before. But this book is amazing. I wonder if he has other books that I should check out. And it's essentially a dystopian future scenario. It's a thriller. It follows this girl she's about 16, I don't remember exactly, and what her life is like in this new modern world where you essentially live in like a forced commune, and everyone has different jobs, but most people just stay at home all day, and they have to walk on this like treadmill type of thing. But the way I understood it is they kind of moved it, and in doing that they generated power, and they were forced to do that to like these like little nourishment cubes, and that's all you get to eat. And there's guards on duty at all time to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And it's just very creepy. And then it follows her eventually getting a new job at a nursery after she has a baby, because the key part here is when you have a child, you don't get to keep it. Like, gosh, my motherly instincts can't even handle this concept. And they take your baby away from you once you give birth, and they bring it to a nursery school vibe, and all the children are raised together by the state, and they never get to know their parents, and the concept of even a mom and a dad or parents is totally foreign to these new kids. It's really sad. And for instance, everyone needs to be treated totally equally, but to an extreme fault. One example that really sticks with me is they're at the nursery when she's working at night. One of these little boys starts crying, and she goes to see what's wrong, and she's not supposed to do any of this, by the way, but he's like, well, I really have to go to the bathroom, but we're not allowed to go to the bathroom except when everyone else goes to the bathroom. And she lets him go pee, but that's not allowed. They would rather him just pee his pants, because in order to be equal, you can only go to the bathroom when everyone else goes, before bed and in the morning, and I just can't even imagine. Can't imagine growing up in that world. And so interesting, and it's just kind of about her trying to rescue her own baby that gets sent to this nursery, and now you're forced to pair up, and usually you don't get to pick who you're with, and you have to make a baby with them. It's insane, and then her parents get taken away and get recycled, but they basically turn them into, I don't know what, food, or it's so creepy. So freaking creepy. I really recommend it. So I'll read you the back. How much would you risk to be free? Emmeline and her family live in a place that just a generation ago was called America. Now it's simply known as the Republic. There is no president, no Congress, no Supreme Court, no freedom. There are only the authorities. This bleak and barren existence is all that 18-year-old Emmeline has ever known. She dutifully walks her energy board daily and accepts all male bearings assigned to her by the authorities. Like most citizens, she keeps her head down and her eyes closed until the day they come for the one she loves most. Yeah, it's so good. I would highly recommend this one as well, you guys. And let's see, perhaps I can read you the first page again. Gwen. He actually has a lot of other books, but I've never read them. Have you guys? Have you heard of him before? Agenda 21. And then there's just some quotes and references that inspired the book. And here we go. Chapter 1. They took Mother away today. I was on my energy board when they came. They didn't knock. They just came in. Men in black uniforms. Enforcers. I shut off my board and stumbled, hitting my hip against the metal sidebar. They didn't say anything. My meter was only halfway to the finish point. Mother had gotten off her sleeping mat when she heard them at the door, and stood there, head down. How tangled her hair looked, gray and lifeless. They asked which sleeping mat was hers. She pointed to mine. I started to say, "No, that's mine," but she gave a little shake of her head, so I kept quiet. One of them rolled up the mat and put it under his arm. The other one tied short, dirty ropes to Mother's wrist. I knew not to cry in front of the enforcers, but tears burned hot behind my eyes. Mother hadn't done her duty walking since I was paired with Jeremy 2 days ago. She had stayed curled up on her sleeping mat, her face to the wall, her back a row of bony knobs. I had walked both my board and hers those 2 days, so our meters would register at central authority for 2 people. That was the only way to get food for both of us. Maybe they could tell one person was doing 2 different meters, because the meter registered at different times. Who knows? I've seen too many things over the almost 18 years I've spent on this earth to ever doubt the authorities' power. Pretty creepy already, and it's so good. There's a little love story in there too, and I'd really recommend it. Okay, this is the only non-fiction that I have to mention it. This is the utter classic. I'm sure you've heard of it before. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And this is just all about mindfulness and living in the present moment and the power of that, and how much joy you can feel that just being here in this very moment, everything is perfect, nothing to worry about, nothing to think about, just exist and realize how much more joy that will bring your life to really notice your surroundings and what's happening, instead of being so stuck in your mind, so worried and stressed out about the future or the past, just to be. And yeah, it's a fairly classic. Now this looks pristine because I actually just listened to the audiobook version, but it was so good I wanted a copy. So I shall read you the back to make the journey into the power of now. We will need to leave our analytical mind and its false created self, the ego, behind. From the very first page of this extraordinary book, we move rapidly into a significantly higher altitude where we breathe a lighter air. We become connected to the indestructible essence of our being. We become connected to the indestructible essence of our being. The eternal, ever-present, one life beyond the myriad forms of life that are subject to birth and death. Your soul, basically. Although the journey is challenging, Eckhart Tolle uses simple language and an easy question and answer format to guide us. A word-of-mouth phenomenon since its first publication, The Power of Now is one of those rare books with the power to create an experience in you're struggling with any kind of mental health issues, I really think you'll get some benefit out of this. The little quote at the start is cute. You are here to enable the divine purpose of the universe to unfold. That is how important you are. Okay, there's a little preface and an introduction. Alright, chapter 1. You are not your mind. A beggar had been sitting by the side of a road for over 30 years. One day, a stranger walked by. "Spare some change," mumbled the beggar, mechanically holding out his old baseball cap. I have nothing to give you," said the stranger. Then he asked, "What's that you are sitting on?" "Nothing," replied the beggar. "Just an old box. I have been sitting on it for as long as I can remember." "Ever looked inside?" asked the stranger. "No," said the beggar. "What's the point? There's nothing in there." "Have a look inside," insisted the stranger. The beggar managed to pry open the box with astonishment, disbelief, and elation. He saw that the box was filled with gold. "I am that stranger who has nothing to give you, and who is telling you to look inside. Not inside any box, as in the parable, but somewhere even closer. Inside yourself." I almost want to reread it, just the physical version, because it's different. But yeah, I'd recommend it. Okay, we're officially halfway. I'll try to speed it up a little bit, because my cats are losing it, if you can hear them. So next, I obviously read this when I was in school, but I just reread it with this, older and wiser. It hits differently. I can't get over how good this book is. So it's, of course, 1984 by George Orwell. And if you didn't read this in school, you really should now anyways. And if you have, it's been, a few years, try reading it again. Because it didn't fully grasp what was really happening in the book when I read it at like 16 or whatever. But when I read it again at 26, I'm just like, wow, how genius the book is. It's incredible. So in case you've never heard of it, I'll just read you the back. Winston Smith works for the Ministry of Truth in London, chief city of Airstrip 1. Big Brother stares out from every poster. The thought police uncover every act of betrayal. When Winston falls in love with Julia, he discovers that life does not have to be dull and deadening, and awakens to new possibilities. Despite the police helicopters that hover and circle overhead, Winston and Julia begin to question the party. They are drawn towards conspiracy against the party. Yet Big Brother will not tolerate dissent, even in the mind. For those with original thoughts, they invented Room 101, ... Just where they get tortured, and it's crazy. 1984 is George Orwell's terrifying vision of a totalitarian future in which everything and everyone is a slave to a tyrannical regime. The best book ever, you guys. It's so, so good, and will really make you realize how lucky we are to have freedom and how easily that can disappear. It's just such a good book. Okay, and as will be kind of clear, I was going through a bit of a dystopian classics phase. So I've never read this, but I heard lots of good things. My old roommate, this was actually her favorite book. And this is by Aldous Huxley. And it's called Brave New World. And I'm sure you've heard of it. It's pretty much a classic, and it was so interesting. So this is like, again, another dystopian future. This time it's a little different, where people have like, have you heard of the whole bread and circuses thing? Like, in order to keep your society from revolting, even if it's totally messed up, you give them bread and circuses, so they're just too busy being entertained to really get off their ass and do something. That's very much like this book, because everything, like, there's so much sex and food and entertainment, but it's sort of like Agenda 21, where you get born into these facilities and there's not even mothers and parents at all. They actually just like use, science to mix cells together to make babies, and they make people of different classes, and they have specific roles, and they're kind of a bunch of clones, really. It's weird. And yeah, it kind of follows the story of one guy who realizes, like, wait, what's happening here? And it's very, very interesting. I would really recommend it. It's a classic for a reason. So I shall read you the back. Far in the future, the world controllers have created the ideal society through clever use of genetic engineering, brainwashing, which, yeah, by the way, the babies, when they sleep, they listen to different audio recordings that tell them, what the kind of supposed truth is of the world, and brainwash them to be effective, for sure. And recreational sex and drugs, all of its members are happy consumers. Bernard Marx seems alone in feeling discontent, harboring an unnatural desire for solitude. Oh, not do well in this world. And a perverse distaste for the pleasures of compulsory promiscuity. Oh yeah, you have to have sex with random people all the time. It's like, you have to partake in these things, and if you don't, then they label you as like, something might be off with you, and they eventually just like take you away. So you have to take the drugs and party. So, I would not do well in this world. Bernard has an ill-defined longing to break free. A visit to one of the few remaining savage reservations, where the old, imperfect life still continues, may be the cure for his distress. Huxley's ingenious fantasy of the future sheds a blazing light on the present, and is considered to be his most enduring masterpiece. So yeah, so good. again, along the dystopian themes. This is Fahrenheit 451, which is the temperature at which paper burns. And this is all about a firefighter, except in this world, they don't, put out fires, they actually start them. And if you are caught owning any books, they will come to your home and burn your entire house down with the books in them. And then you either die from that or you get sent off to jail or something. And it's about this fire causer who meets this girl who is just so out of the loop in a good way, and makes him realize, like, wait a minute, what am I doing? What's this world? What's happening? And causes him to kind of wake up out of his stupor and start to realize that this world he lives in is so... It makes him start to realize that this world he lives in is just so wrong and so backwards. And, yeah, I don't want to spoil anymore, but it's relatively good. I mean, it's a short, quick read. It wasn't my favorite, but, like I said, it's a classic, and I think it's good to read classics, just to kind of have that reference for when people talk about it. So, yeah, I'll read you the back. 60 years after its original publication, Ray Bradbury's internationally acclaimed novel, Fahrenheit 451, stands as a classic of world literature set in a bleak, dystopian future. Today, its message has grown more relevant than ever before. Guy Montag is a fireman. His job is to destroy the most illegal of commodities, the printed book, along with the houses in which they are hidden. Montag never questions the destruction and ruin his actions produce, returning each day to his planned life and wife Mildred, who spends all day with her television family. But when he meets an eccentric young neighbor, Clarice, who introduces him to a past where people didn't live in fear, and to a present where one sees the world through the ideas in books instead of the mindless chatter of television, Montag begins to question everything he has known. This 60, okay, blah, blah, but yeah, so interesting. Yeah, I would really recommend it, but I recommend the other ones more if you're only going to read a few. Alright, then this last one is a total classic that I'm just rereading for like the 100th time, but this has been a weird time, right? So I just wanted something that kind of helped me to escape from reality a little bit, because I was having a hard time falling asleep. Reading all of these books, they got me a little anxious and did not help with going to bed, but so I started to reread Harry Potter. And if you too are struggling to just calm your mind, sometimes something that is so out there, so intoxicating and different, a totally different world, that can really, really help. So, yeah, I've just been rereading Harry Potter. I'm on the third one now. It's so good. It's just so good. I love Harry Potter so much. And if for some strange reason you have yet to read Harry Potter, you have to. Like, there's a reason it's so popular. It's so good. The movies are okay, but the books are like next level. They're so entertaining. I love them. So, yeah. I just had to give a little shout out to Harry Potter, but I'm sure you've all read that by now. Alright. So that's everything. Those are all the books I've read over the hanging out with